So did you just order a 3D printer kit off of the internet and now you have no idea what you're gonna need in order to, make it work or to build it or to operate it successfully? Even if it's not a kit, did you just buy a 3D printer and you're completely new to it? Well, luckily for you, I'm about to tell you a bunch of essential tools I think will make your life so much easier when owning a 3D printer. Hey, what's up guys? My name is Dustin. How you been? It's been a while, I know, it's crazy. Anyway, in my quest of searching for ideas to make for videos, I had thought, what'd be a good thing is I see a lot of people, having issues with 3D printers or whatever it is online, and they don't have the proper tools to diagnose what issues they're having or to build the printer properly, or even tools that'll just make their lives a little bit easier. So for this video, I'm going to tell you, I think five maybe, I don't know, different tools that will make your life a lot easier when owning a 3D printer. Some of these will be specific to if you are building a 3D printer, DIY 3D printer. Others are going to, pretty much it doesn't matter if you bought one or if you built one, they'll be useful. Anything that I mention here, I'll have links to in the description. If they're an Amazon link, it's an affiliate link, and you can do that and I will get a little bit of commission. I don't make a lot of money on that, but if you want to do that, you can. Otherwise, you can buy these from any source online or in a lot of different stores. Doesn't really matter to me. Anyway, let's get to it. Let me show you all the tools that you will benefit from. So for my first tool, what I would say is probably the most important one to own out of anything for 3D printers or anything is the digital multimeter. Now you don't have to use a digital multimeter, but it makes life so much easier. So they're usually not that much more, you could get these super cheap. Multimeters are basically what they say. They are multimeters. They are meters for various different things. You can measure voltage in AC or DC. You can measure resistance. You can measure, some cases, temperature. You can check for continuity. You can check amperage. There's a lot of different things you can do. This one, for example, is the one that I use mainly. This is just a cheap one that I got at Walmart, I think for 20 bucks. It's a decent quality. It's not a fluke. Of course, I'd like to have a fluke multimeter, but I don't really need it. Multimeters like this are super useful and super awesome. You don't even have to go with something like this. You could also go with a super cheap one like this. This is one that you can get at Harbor Freight. If you get their coupons in the mail, you can literally get this multimeter for free. They usually have coupons in there for this multimeter free with any purchase of like $5 or more or something like that. So this is obviously not a super high quality meter. It's not super accurate. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it is fine for the majority of what you need it for when it comes to 3D printing. Especially if you're building a 3D printer yourself, when it comes to testing voltages, you're testing power supplies, you need to tune your stepper drivers, you need to check resistances of the bed or different heating elements or thermistors. Having a multimeter of any quality is very, very useful. And like I said, digital is recommended because they're really not that much more expensive than the analog versions, and they're infinitely easier to deal with. So if you're not going to buy anything else out of any of these videos, multimeters are awesome. This next one is going to be specific to if you are building a 3D printer, mostly. If you happen to have a 3D printer that's a pre-built machine but you need to take it apart or something, this would also help. But in this case, a metric Allen key set mainly. This happens to be a micro tool set that's got a whole bunch of micro screwdrivers, but the main thing is it includes metric Allen key heads. It's got a whole bunch of different ones from I think 1.3 millimeter up to 4 millimeter. And if you are, for example, building a Folgertech 3D printer kit, these are all the Allen keys that you would actually need. You don't need a toolkit like this. You could also go and just get like one of those small little baggy Allen key sets from like a Lowe's or something like that. You can get the cheap Allen key sets that they have at Harbor Freight. Those are absolutely fine. I usually will go between using these and going with just regular Allen keys, and the majority of the 3D printers that, at least that we sell, Folgertech sells, are, just standard little Allen key heads, and that's all you'd really need. Of course, in some cases, it may also help to have metric wrenches as well. The majority of 3D printers are going to be in metric, so if you're getting any tool sets that happen to be, metric or standard versions, go with a metric, especially for 3D printers, unless you know that your printer is weird and uses, standard size. But metric is the standard when it comes to 3D printing, so that's what I would recommend. These kind of toolkits, they're not that expensive. This one actually got from Folger Tag. John sent it to me. I don't know if he carries it anymore, but he used to carry these on his website, I think. But you can get these pretty cheap if you look. There's the model number if you're curious. They're not that expensive, and you can get anything similar to this. Small little micro tool sets. That's all you really need. They're super useful for a lot of things, not just 3D printers. A lot of things. This next one is super useful for anyone with a 3D printer. Doesn't matter if it's home built or not. Micro pliers. These ones happen to be Cobalt micro pliers. This is just 2 of the ones that I had laying around, but this actually came in a set of like 6 different types. These are super useful for anyone with a 3D printer. So if you've ever 3D printed something and you started a print and you know how there's a little bit of filament that oozes out at the very beginning before it starts a print, you can take some really long needle nose pliers like this, reach in there at the nozzle and grab off that little bit of filament that's squirting out. That way it doesn't interfere when they start laying down the first layer. Something like this is super useful. I also recommend some sort of cutters, whether it's flush cut cutters like these or diagonal cutters, wire cutters, as people call them. That way you can trim the filament pretty easily. You can cut it at an angle. I usually recommend, if you're having trouble feeding the filament into an extruder, cut the filament at an angle, a sharp angle, so it has a point. That way it'll help itself guide in. Trimming off support pieces. There's a million different uses for these, but micro plier sets, you can get them fairly cheap. I think Cobalt at Lowe's has a set of like 6 or something like that for 15-20 bucks. And they're really good. I'm sure Harbor Freight's got them for way cheaper. Recommend these a lot. The 4th tool, and probably the final tool, you'll see more about that in a minute, that I recommend is a IR heat gun. So this is an infrared thermometer. Why is this useful? Well, it's not really necessary in everyday usage of a 3D printer, but for troubleshooting. Say you're having issues with your print sticking to your bed, and you're like, I know it's heated, but it's just not sticking right. Well, you can take this and you can shine it right onto the bed and get a temperature reading. This happens to be in Fahrenheit, but you can also get it in Celsius. So, say your heat bed is registering at 90 degrees Celsius and you shine it on there and it happens to only be registering at 60, then you have an issue with your bed heating or your thermistor, something like that. You can also do this on the hot end. That way it's more of a sanity check to make sure your thermistors are right, but you can also check to see if other components are getting hot. Something's overloading some wires. You can see, wow, these wires are really hot. That's not a good thing. Well, that will help you with it. And of course, these are also super useful for a lot of different things, not just 3D printing, just checking temperature in general, especially if you're a auto mechanic. These are really useful for that too. These are not that expensive. I think I paid like 10 bucks for this on Amazon. So link will be in the description for that. Last but not least, this is not a tool, it's a sandwich. I wonder how many of you actually got that reference. Anyway, this is not really a tool more than spare parts. 3D printing stuff. I recommend having spare parts for everything. You don't have to have control boards. I happen to have them because I do. But when it comes to 3D printing, thermistors. Thermistors are super useful because they're super fragile and they break a lot. So having just thermistors is really, really useful. If you happen to have an open source 3D printer, that stuff you can buy is real cheap, like any of the Folger Tech stuff. All the parts are all off the shelf stuff you can get super cheap. Heaters, heater core dies, you don't have a spare? Well, now you're not gonna be able to 3D print for a couple days. Have some spares. A hot end of some sort, have some spare parts for them. These stupid green connectors, we all know and hate them, but it's good to have some spares in case something happens. Stepper drivers. Stepper drivers occasionally do fail, and when they fail, well, you can't print for a little while until you get some replacements. Have some spares. Nozzles. Nozzles clog over time. Nozzles, get worn out over time. It's good to have backups for nozzles. If you're gonna get backups for any parts, I really just recommend nozzles, thermistors, and probably the whole hot end assembly in general. So the hot end, the actual heat block, the heater, the thermistor, and the heat break tube. Those are the things that wear out the most, and those are probably really all that you'll need under most circumstances. But I do recommend, you know, some extra stepper drivers, because those do occasionally fail. If you really want to be sure, an extra control board, even the expensive MKS boards that we use on like the FD5, they're only like 35 bucks, so they're not that expensive, and it's good to have a spare, because if something happens, hey look, you have a spare. That's awesome. Super useful. You don't have to worry about getting them online and having to get them shipped to you, anything like that. So I hope you found that video useful. Hopefully some of you are going to be buying some of these tools, because they are super useful and they'll make your life so much easier when you're dealing with a 3D printer. Like I said, multimeters, if you're going to get nothing else, get a multimeter. That makes my life easier as tech support, because when I ask you to check the resistance of your thermistor to see if it's faulty and you're like, I don't have a multimeter, you're going to need a multimeter, because they're not going to give you a replacement unless you check it. So yeah, get a multimeter. They're not expensive. Just get one, please. Otherwise, spare parts, that's also useful, but that's also going to depend a lot on what printer you have. If you have open source 3D printers, the Fulgitech stuff, you can buy all of those parts online really cheap. If you have some $3,000 proprietary already built 3D printer, you might not have a very open availability for parts. So that's really going to depend on what you have. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, if there's any other tools that you think you'd recommend to somebody, put them in the comments below, and let everyone else see what you would recommend. Let me know if you agree with my list or not, and so on and so forth. And say hi. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, because likes do help get the video out to other people. If you're not subscribed to my channel, subscribe. I make videos sometimes. Like I said in my last video, if you check down in the description, there is a new Fulgitech coupon code that you can use. You can get 5% off anything you purchase on that website, on the Fulgitech's website, if you use the link and the coupon code. I do get kickback. I get 6% of the sale as a commission. You only get 5% discount. That's kind of dumb if you don't care about me, because you can go on the Fulgitech Facebook group and get 11% off. No one makes any money off of that. So if you're going to be buying a big purchase, please go use the group code, because that makes a lot more financial sense. But if you're adamant on supporting me and helping me out, I do get some kickback if you use my code down in the description, and I'm thankful for that if you decide to, but I'm telling you, don't. I'm just telling you that it's there. Same thing with any links to stuff going on Amazon. That is linked to my Amazon affiliate thing, so I'll get whatever percentage they give you on that. I don't really know. I make like a couple cents a month with that sometimes. I'm not really trying to make money off of any of those things. I'm just letting you know that those are options. Otherwise, I got a couple of videos planned. I know a bunch of you out there are, curious on the whole laser cutter thing. And I have some interesting news about laser cutters and 3D printers and all that. I'm not going to announce it quite right now, but let's just say, yeah, I got a business. I'll just say that. Video coming soon. So anyway, like I said, like video, comment, subscribe if you haven't, and until the next video, I'll see y'all later.